But yeah, just to help get us started. So, I myself, more of a background in mobile, have learning more and more about web, and I do think it's an interesting time for web games. There's been a lot of interest in the platform as a whole. I mean, I think right off the back of the now rolled back Unity pricing changes that seem to certainly like spark that conversation a lot. But I mean, John, like you said, you've been looking at web for the last 7 years. So I think for anybody attending who are curious about making that transition or adding it to their pipeline themselves, hoping to give them as much guidance as possible. So just from like a technical perspective, like help me understand like what changes for developers when they're considering rolling out to web. John, maybe I'll start with you from like a platforms, browsers, all this, all the different environments a game can be live in. What did you have to face from a technical perspective rolling your games out when you first started making that transition?
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Yeah, because I had never made a web game before, so it was me pretty much on my own trying to figure that out. So that was a little bit not daunting, but just one of those things where you're figuring out servers and hosting because Apple and Google had essentially hosted our games for us when we
Mm,
were mobile game developers, which had been all of my 15 years before that or so. So yeah, you're not used to actually, hosting the game for people, CDNs, all those kinds of things. So yeah, it was just a little bit of a learning and upskilling and figuring that out. What's the best tech stack for us to use? Um, so over time we iterated, usually just talking to people and figuring out the quick easy wins there. But that was one of the hurdles I think I found.
mm,
But also I found that because on these kinds of games, I quickly found that the audience you're targeting are a lot of the times on very old Chromebooks.
mm,
Um, so the first thing I did was go to the local kind of store and had a basic version of our game Smash Carts running. And way back then, before I had any hardware to test it on, I just went in and tested it on all of their devices and got the cheapest, worst one they had that ran the game. I think it ran
mm,
on nearly all of but basically, and that still to this day is our test device. But that is one of the
mm,
challenges.
mm,
You can't get the same performance, I think, out of that piece of hardware as you would on a basic mobile phone, because it's
mm,
running through a browser on a pretty bad hardware. And also screens are not great, the colors on them and stuff. So you have to manage a bit of that at the same time, trying to make it look good and play really good on, someone might be playing it at home then on their super powerful gaming PC. And
mm,
can you bridge that? That's quite a hardware, like the divide there is huge.
mm,
So yeah, there's quite a lot of that sort of upskilling. But yeah, that was something that I found a lot easier because I'd come from mobile games way back when that was all the optimization techniques that I would have done for every game from back then. But yeah, the actual serving the game and all of that kind of stuff was actually completely new to me. So that was
mm.
definitely a new one.
Yeah.
Those are the things.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I mean, obviously in mobile, I always made a point of testing on the lowest quality devices, just making sure that they absolutely run on that. But yeah, in the web space, I mean, I feel like the bar on lower quality is so much harder to find, right? There's so many. So are you like you're like in the computer store, like going around on the demo computers playing like all of them,
I
and you're
had
like,
no
hey,
shame back
what
then.
is
I
this
went
guy
in,
doing?
yeah. And the guy comes over, he's like, "Hey, like this one's." I'm like, "I'm looking for the worst one. What's your worst? Like that's got too much RAM. Have you got anything with lower RAM than that?" He was like, "This is reverse,
Yeah.
totally his usual technique." I'm like, "Yeah, I need something worse. I'm gonna go to the other store and see if they've got a better, worse machine than you guys." But yeah, that's what I did. And then we've been since trying to buy on find these the same thing because we want to have another one of these laptops around these Chromebooks, but can't find it anywhere. But yeah, that's it's one of the things I would do that. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, 100%. Grab people's phones, play it on that, always the same thing.
What about browsers, Raph? I'll ask you about this. I mean, CrazyGames, amazing platform, active all over. Do you see any impact on the browsers that players play on? And does that impact the development cycle at all? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess most people use Chrome, right? That's where we see it. But it does have, especially like for mobile web, like Safari, you have some problems there as well, right? Now we're receiving like the first like web GPU kind of oriented games, like we're about to release one, and then you really see that it works in Chrome, but then the other browsers there's still lacking.
Mm.
I think that has an impact as well, with Chrome being like the best browser for web games.
And how can a developer, other than obviously testing, but how do they go about understanding the performance or like their FPS or what have you on different browsers? Like, is it sort of just digging through the data, trying to like split it and see where the peaks and valleys are? Like, what do developers have to do to prepare themselves for this?
Yeah, it's definitely good if you can testing multiple machines. And John approach is the one we also have. It's like we have really old Chromebooks and all the machines where we, or even mobile as well, where we tested everything. And but yeah, like Crazy Games, we can disable if the game is too heavy, then we can disable, for instance, Chromebooks and just take them away.
Yeah.
I think that the point is like for web games. There's a lot of people that play because that's the only way that they can play games, right? So
hmm
there's
hmm
that's one thing to consider. But also we also see more and more people actually coming because the experience is it's very snappy, right? You can just
hmm
press a button and then it just really to start. And the games are getting better and better, right? The
hmm
John games, it's a great example of it. Yeah, and I feel like so it's changing a bit as
mm
well. For the developers, they still need to look back at the different machines and optimize. There's plenty of information. Like on Crazy Games, we provide um, a lot of tips and also tools, right? Especially if we're
hmm
talking about community games, they tend to be the
hmm
ones that are more I would say the most challenging ones, right? Because the WebGL build tends to be big,
hmm
and a computer needs some processing power as well, right?
hmm
And I think that um those are the points. But yeah, testing, just
Yeah,
get
just
the
do it.
old
Keep
code.
testing. Yeah.
Um,
Awesome. Everton, you've recently made the switch, more recently, I suppose, to web with your game Ease Supermarket,
Mhm.
which was scaling on mobile prior to that. What did you experience in terms of just converting the playability of the game, right? I mean, if you're mobile first and you're very mobile first in your design, you're thinking about the natural resting position of the user's hand and very low friction controls. Obviously, the web space, I mean, mobile web would benefit from just maintaining those controls, but what impact on your development cycle, just to the core mechanic of how the game is played, did you go through?
Good question. We started our journey in web 3 years ago, exactly with Rafa
Mm,
and CrazyGames. We start to bring our hybrid casual experience to and see what will happen with this kind of experience on mobile. I
mm,
think mobile to web is an easy way comparing to PC to web because, like the guys already mentioned it, we have a lot of big challenge performance in speaking on mobile, so we be a bit more prepared to explore
mm,
web in these terms. And given our hyper casual background, we always try to offer something easy to understand, easy to play. So was basically adapt that to web wasn't a huge step, a huge jump, wasn't hard stuff. But the key in there is use properly the new tools we have. For example, the keyboard controls and even the
mm,
mouse. We created a small adapter converting instantaneously our one finger control from mobile to a keyboard and mouse to web, like a Diablo
mm,
input, for example.
mm.
And we are using this for all our games and worked perfectly.
Smart, smart.